The starship Avalon dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a gentle shudder that Katie Morrison barely noticed anymore. She stood at the observation window of the research deck, her coffee growing cold in her hands as she watched the forest moon of Kethros Prime grow larger in the VIEWPORT. Green and brown swirled across the surface like paint on a spinning marble. Massive trees covered every visible landmass, their canopies so thick that no ground was visible from orbit. Somewhere down there, in those endless forests, lived the KETH Rani. Katie had read every report the Galactic database had on them. Apex predators, pack hunters, claws that could tear through ship hull plating, eyes that could see in complete darkness, teeth designed for one purpose and one purpose only. She should have been afraid. Everyone kept telling her she should be afraid. Instead, she felt something close to excitement bubbling in her chest. The door behind her hissed open, and Commander Derek Holt walked in with a datapad in his hand and worry lines on his face. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and the kind of tired eyes that came from too many years of first contact missions gone wrong. "Morrison," he said, his voice flat. "You missed the briefing." Katie turned from the window and offered him a small smile. "I read the briefing notes. Don't make sudden movements. Don't look directly at the Cubs. Don't touch anyone unless they touch you first. Don't run. Don't show fear. And yet here you are, staring at their planet like it's a vacation destination." "I'm a xenobiologist, Commander. This is exactly what a vacation destination looks like to me." Derek sighed and walked to stand beside her at the window. He studied her face for a long moment, trying to understand her. He had been working with humans for 30 years, and they still surprised him sometimes. The Kethrani have killed every soft-skinned species that has ever set foot on their world, he said quietly. The Velmari sent a diplomatic team 15 years ago. 6 ambassadors. They lasted 3 hours before the Kethrani decided they were prey. Katie nodded. She knew the story. The Velmari ran. They ran because something with claws the size of kitchen knives was chasing them. Most species would run. I know. Katie took a sip of her cold coffee and made a face. That's why they invited us, isn't it? Because we're different. Derek looked at her with something between admiration and concern. The Kethrani had reached out to humanity specifically. They had heard stories, rumors that spread through the galactic networks. Stories about a species that kept predators as pets. Stories about creatures called dogs and cats that lived in human homes, slept in human beds, ate from human hands. Stories about humans who swam with sharks and walked among bears and treated the most dangerous beasts as friends. The Kethrani wanted to see if the stories were true. Just because we're different doesn't mean we're safe, Derek said. Safe is boring. Commander. He shook his head but couldn't hide the small smile that crossed his face. Get your gear ready. We land in 2 hours. The landing zone was a clearing in the forest, a patch of open ground surrounded by trees so tall that Katie couldn't see their tops. The Avalon's shuttle touched down with a soft thump, and the ramp lowered with a hiss of pressure equalization. Katie was the third one down the ramp, following Derek and 2 security officers who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. The air hit her immediately, warm and thick and filled with scents she had never smelled before. Something sweet like flowers, mixed with something musky and wild. She loved it instantly. The Kethrani were waiting for them. There were 12 of them standing at the edge of the clearing, arranged in a loose semicircle. They were exactly as the reports described, and also nothing like the reports at all. The files talked about height and weight and claw length. They didn't mention the way the Kethrani moved, fluid and graceful, like water flowing over rocks. They didn't mention the intelligence in those golden eyes. The way each Kethrani studied the humans with obvious curiosity. They were beautiful, Katie realized. In the way that tigers were beautiful, in the way that wolves were beautiful. Dangerous and elegant and utterly captivating, the largest Kethrani stepped forward. He was old, Katie could tell, with silver fur around his muzzle and scars crossing his chest. His name, according to the briefing, was Vextari, and he was the senior diplomat of the Kathrani Dominion. He spoke in a language that sounded like gravel and thunder, and the translator in Katie's ear turned it into words she could understand. You are the humans. It was not a question. Derek stepped forward with his hands visible and his posture carefully neutral. We are. I am Commander Derek Holt, representing Earth and the Human Alliance. We thank you for your invitation. Vextari's eyes moved slowly across the human delegation. They paused on the security officers on the weapons at their hips. Then they moved to Katie, who was standing slightly apart from the group, her head tilted as she studied the Kathrani with obvious fascination. Your weapons, Vextari said. They are small. Derek hesitated. They are sufficient for our needs. A rumble passed through the assembled Kathrani. It took Katie a moment to realize they were laughing. Sufficient, Vextari repeated. You come to a world of predators with weapons you call sufficient. He stepped closer, and the security officers tensed, his golden eyes fixed on Derek's face. Either you are very foolish, or you are something we have not seen before. We are hoping for the second option, Derek said carefully. Vextari studied him for a long moment. Then he turned and began walking toward the trees. Come, we will show you our village. You will eat with us. You will sleep in our territory. He glanced back over his shoulder. If you survive the night, we will discuss your alliance. The humans followed. Katie fell into step beside Derek as they walked, her eyes constantly moving, taking in every detail. The trees were even more massive up close, their trunks wider than houses. Rope bridges and wooden platforms connected them high above, and she could see shapes moving through the branches. More Kathrani watching from above. They're testing us, Derek murmured. Of course they are, Katie replied. That's what predators do. They test potential threats. They look for weakness, and if they find it? Katie glanced up at the shapes in the trees, at the golden eyes gleaming in the shadows. A small smile crossed her face. Then I guess we better not be weak. The village was carved into the trees themselves, a massive network of structures built into and around the ancient trunks. Walkways of woven rope connected platforms at various heights, and Katie could see Kathrani of all ages moving through the canopy. Adults with scarred fur and practiced movements. Younger ones who moved with more energy and less grace, and cubs. Katie's heart jumped when she saw them. They were smaller versions of the adults, fuzzy and big-eyed and absolutely adorable in the way that all young predators were adorable. They chased each other through the branches, pouncing and wrestling, and making high-pitched sounds that the translator didn't bother converting. She watched one cub leap from a branch and tackle another, sending both of them tumbling onto a wide platform where an adult caught them with an exasperated growl. Morrison. She snapped her attention back to find Derek watching her with a warning. Look, don't even think about it, he said. I wasn't thinking anything. You were thinking about petting one. Katie opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. She had absolutely been thinking about petting one. Just remember the protocol, Derek said. No direct interaction with the cubs. They're the most protected members of Kathrani society. Even looking at them wrong could be seen as a threat. Katie nodded, but her eyes drifted back to the branches above, where a small face with oversized ears was peering down at her with obvious curiosity. She didn't know it yet, but that small face belonged to a cub named Zira, and before the day was over, that cub would change the course of human and Kathrani relations forever. The feast was held on a massive platform built into the junction of three ancient trees. Wooden tables were arranged in a circle, and the smell of cooked meat filled the air. Katie sat with the rest of the human delegation. Trying not to stare too obviously at everything around her, the Kathrani moved through the space with easy grace, carrying plates of food and jugs of some dark liquid that smelled like honey and smoke. They talked among themselves in low rumbles, occasionally glancing at the humans with expressions that Katie couldn't quite read. Vextari sat at the head of the central table, watching the humans eat. He had explained, through the translator, that the food was safe for human consumption. The Kethrani had done their research. They knew what humans could and could not digest. Katie found that oddly touching. "You do not eat like prey," Vextari observed, his golden eyes fixed on Derek. Derek looked up from his plate. "How does prey eat?" Quickly, nervously, always watching for danger. Vextari's tail swished behind him. "You eat slowly. You talk while you eat. You do not guard your food." "We don't have much experience being prey," Derek admitted. That rumbling laugh passed through the Kethrani again. Katie was starting to understand that it wasn't mockery. It was genuine amusement mixed with something like respect. "Your world," Vextari said. "Tell me about the predators there." Derek looked at Katie. This was her area of expertise. After all, she set down her fork and thought for a moment before speaking. "We have many predators on Earth. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, sharks, crocodiles. Some that hunt in packs, some that hunt alone. Some in the water, some on land, some in the air." Vextari leaned forward slightly. "And your people? How do you survive among them?" "In the old days, we hunted them back. We made weapons and worked together and became predators ourselves." Katie smiled. "But then something strange happened. We started to keep them." A murmur rippled through the listening Kethrani. "Keep them," Vextari repeated. "You mean as prisoners?" "No, as friends. As family." Katie could see the confusion on the Kethrani faces, and she felt a surge of affection for these fierce, proud creatures who couldn't understand what she was describing. "We took wolves into our homes and fed them and bred them until they became dogs. They sleep in our beds now. Our children play with them. They protect us, and we protect them." Vextari was silent for a long moment. His claws tapped against the wooden table in a slow rhythm. "The stories," he said finally. "They are true, they're true." He looked at her with new eyes. Not the eyes of a predator assessing prey, but something more complicated. Something Katie couldn't name. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "you are worth knowing after all." The feast continued, but Katie found herself growing restless. There was so much to see, so much to learn, and sitting at a table felt like wasting precious time. She caught Derek's eye and gestured toward the edge of the platform. He shook his head slightly, but she was already standing. "I need to stretch my legs," she said quietly. "I won't go far." Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but Vextari waved a clawed hand. "Let her walk. She will not leave our sight." Katie nodded gratefully and slipped away from the table. She walked to the edge of the platform, where a rope bridge connected to a smaller structure built around a single tree. From there, she could see down into a clearing below, where younger Kethrani were playing some kind of game that involved a lot of chasing and pouncing. She stood there watching, completely absorbed, when she felt eyes on her, looking up. She saw a small face peering at her from a branch about 10 feet away. The same face she had noticed earlier. A cub with oversized ears and fur that was still fluffy with youth. Golden eyes studied her with intense curiosity. Katie smiled without thinking about it. The cub's ears perked up. According to protocol, Katie should have looked away. She should have returned to the feast and pretended she hadn't seen anything. Direct engagement with cubs was forbidden for outsiders, but the cub was so clearly curious. And Katie had never been very good at following rules that didn't make sense to her. "Hello there," she said softly. The cub's tail twitched. It inched closer along the branch, its body low and its eyes wide. Katie stayed very still, keeping her posture relaxed and open. She had worked with young predators before back on Earth, lion cubs at a rescue center, wolf pups at a rehabilitation facility. The rules were the same across species. No sudden movements, no threatening postures, no signs of fear. The cub crept closer. Behind Katie, the feast continued. The Kethrani adults were still talking with Derek, discussing trade routes and diplomatic protocols. No one had noticed the cub's approach. No one except one adult, who was watching from the shadows with growing alarm. Kessler had been keeping an eye on his daughter all evening. Zero was always curious, always pushing boundaries, always getting into places shouldn't be. Usually he found it endearing. Tonight, with outsiders in their territory, it made him nervous. He watched as Zira crept along the branch toward the human female. His muscles tensed, ready to intervene. But something stopped him. The human wasn't afraid. He could smell fear. Old Kathrani could. It was an unmistakable scent, sharp and sour, impossible to hide. Every other soft-skinned species that had visited their world had reeked of it. Even the ones who tried to act brave couldn't hide what their bodies gave away. This human smelled like nothing he had ever encountered. Curiosity, yes. Excitement, definitely, but fear? Not even a trace. Kethsur stayed in the shadows, watching. Zira reached the end of the branch. She was only a few feet from the human now, close enough to pounce. Her hindquarters wiggled as she prepared to leap. Kethsur's claws extended. If Zira attacked and the human reacted badly, he would have to intervene. His daughter's life was more important than any diplomatic mission. Zira pounced. She launched herself from the branch with all the enthusiasm of youth. Her small claws extended, aiming directly at the human's legs. It was a play attack, the kind of pounce Kathrani cubs practiced on each other 100 times a day. But those small claws could still cut. That small body could still knock a human off balance and over the edge of the platform. Kethsur surged forward, but he was too slow. The human moved with surprising speed. She pivoted on one foot, bending low, and caught Zira in midair with both hands. The cub's momentum spun them both around. And instead of falling, instead of screaming, instead of any of the things Kethsur expected, the human laughed. She laughed and spun in a circle, holding his daughter against her chest like Zira weighed nothing at all. She laughed with pure, unfiltered joy, the sound echoing across the platform. Zira, stunned for half a second, let out a trill of delight. Her paws batted at the human's hair. Her tail whipped back and forth with excitement. The human slowed her spin and held Zira up, looking at the cub with warm eyes and a wide smile. "Aren't you a brave little one?" she said. Zira purred. Kethsur stopped in his tracks, his claws slowly retracting. He stared at the scene before him, trying to understand what he was seeing. Behind him, silence had fallen over the feast. Every Kathrani on the platform had turned to look. Vexthari had risen from his seat, his old face unreadable. Derek and the other humans had gone pale, clearly aware that something significant had happened, but not sure what. The silence stretched for a long moment. Katie finally seemed to notice that everyone was staring at her. She looked around at the frozen Kathrani, at the shocked humans, and then down at the purring cub in her arms. She said. "Was I not supposed to do that?" No one answered. Zira, oblivious to the tension, reached up and patted Katie's cheek with a soft paw. She made a chirping sound that needed no translation. She wanted to play more. Katie looked at the cub, then at the watching Kathrani, then at Derek's horrified face. She had no idea what she had just done. She only knew that the small, warm weight in her arms felt right, and the cub seemed happy. And that had to count for something, didn't it? Vexthari began walking toward her, his old legs moving with slow purpose. The crowd parted before him like water around a stone. Katie held Zira a little closer and waited to find out if she had just started a war. The silence on the platform was so complete that Katie could hear her own heartbeat. It pounded in her chest as Vexthari approached, each step of his clawed feet clicking against the wooden floor. Zira continued to purr in her arms, completely unaware of the tension. The cub had found a strand of Katie's hair and was batting at it with fascination, making small chirping sounds of delight. Vexthari stopped an arm's length away. His golden eyes moved from Katie's face to Zira, then back again. His expression was impossible to read. "Do you understand," he said slowly, "what you have just done?" Katie swallowed hard. "I caught a cub who was jumping at me." A murmur rippled through the watching Kathrani. It wasn't the laughing rumble from before. This was something different, something charged with emotion Katie couldn't identify. "In 10 generations, Vexthari said. No outsider has ever touched a Kathrani cub." He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. Those who tried were killed. Those who ran were hunted across worlds. Those who harmed cubs were destroyed so completely that their species still speaks of it in whispers. Katie's arms tightened slightly around Zira. I didn't try to harm her. I was just ... You were laughing. Vextharius' voice was strange, almost wondering. A predator's child leapt at you with claws extended and you laughed. From behind her, Katie heard Derek's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. Elder Vexthari, I apologize on behalf of the human delegation. Our xenobiologist meant no offense. She didn't understand the cultural significance of ... Silence. Vexthari didn't raise his voice, but the command in it was absolute. Derek stopped mid-sentence. The old Kethrani stepped closer to Katie. She held her ground, though every instinct told her to back away. Zira chose that moment to climb higher in her arms, tiny claws pricking through her jacket as the cub settled on her shoulder. She likes you, Vexthari observed. She's sweet. Katie reached up carefully and scratched behind Zira's ear. The cub's purr grew louder. I have a niece back home. She does the same thing, minus the claws. Jumps at people when she's excited. My sister's still teaching her not to do it to strangers. Something shifted in Vextharius' face. It was subtle, just a slight softening around his eyes, but Katie noticed it. You compare our cub to your own young. All children are curious. All children like to play. That's true everywhere, isn't it? Vexthari was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the other Kethrani watched and waited. Their bodies tense, ready for any command their elder might give. Then Kethser stepped forward from the shadows. Katie hadn't noticed him before, but she recognized him immediately as Zira's father. He had the same pattern of spots on his ears, the same golden shade in his eyes. He was younger than Vexthari, his movements more powerful, his presence more dangerous. He walked toward Katie with the deliberate grace of a hunter. Why? He asked, his voice a low growl. Did you not defend yourself? Katie blinked. Defend myself? From what? From my daughter? Kethser's claws were extended, gleaming in the light of the torches. She attacked you. She could have cut your legs open. She could have knocked you from this platform. You could have died. She wasn't attacking me. Katie looked at him with genuine confusion. She was playing. How do you know? Because I've seen predators attack and I've seen predators play. The body language is completely different. Her ears were forward, not back. Her claws were extended, but loosely. She wasn't aiming for anything vital. Katie shrugged carefully, mindful of the cub on her shoulder. She just wanted attention. Kethser stared at her. His claws slowly retracted. You read her, he said. Like you would read one of your own. She's not that different from the young predators on my world. Curious, playful, testing boundaries? Katie smiled at Zira, who was now chewing on a strand of her hair, and absolutely determined to get into trouble. Something changed in the air. Katie felt it before she saw it. The tension that had gripped the platform began to ease. The Kethrani around them shifted their postures, their expressions moving from shock to something else. Curiosity. Vex single quotes. I turned to face the gathered crowd. His voice carried across the platform with the weight of decades of leadership. We invited the humans here because of stories. Stories of a species that walks among predators without fear. Stories of beasts that should kill them, living in their homes instead. He gestured toward Katie and Zira. Now we see the truth of those stories with our own eyes. He looked at Kethser. Your daughter chose to test this human. What did she find? Kethser was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on Katie's face. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. She found no fear, he said. No anger. No threat. He paused. She found someone who understood what she was doing and responded with joy. And what does that tell us about the humans? Another pause. The entire platform seemed to hold its breath. It tells us, Kethser said slowly, that they may be what they claim to be, something we have never encountered before, something that does not fit into the categories we know. Vexthari nodded. He turned back to Katie. In our culture, when a cub chooses to engage with someone outside the family, it is significant. It does not happen by accident. Cubs are protected above all else. They are taught from birth to be wary of strangers, to trust only family. Katie looked at Zira, who had finally finished chewing her hair and was now curled against her neck, purring softly. She wasn't wary of me, Katie said. No, she was not. Vextharius' old eyes were warm now, the hostility gone. Cubs sense things that adults have learned to hide. They feel the truth of a person's nature. My people believe that when a cub chooses someone, they are seeing something real. And what did Zira see? That, Vexthari said, is what we must discuss. He turned and walked toward the edge of the platform, gesturing for the other elders to follow. Kethsor hesitated, looking at his daughter still perched on Katie's shoulder. Will she come down? Katie asked. A hint of amusement crossed Kethsor's face. When she is ready. My daughter is very stubborn. I don't mind. She's comfortable. Kethsor studied her for a long moment. You truly feel no fear? I feel lots of things. Right now, mostly I feel confused about what's happening. But afraid? Katie shook her head. No, she's a child. Children don't scare me, even when they have claws. Kethsor made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are a strange creature, human. I've been told that before. He walked away to join the elders. Leaving Katie standing alone with Zira, Derek rushed to her side, his face a mixture of relief and exasperation. Morrison, he hissed. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that a child was jumping at me and I should catch her. Katie reached up to adjust Zira, who had started to slip. Was I supposed to let her fall? You were supposed to follow protocol. The protocol said no direct engagement. She engaged with me. Katie looked at him with calm eyes. What was I supposed to do, throw her? Derek opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had no answer for that. Just stay here, he said finally. Don't move. Don't touch anyone else. Don't do anything until they decide what to do with us. He walked toward where the elders were conferring in low voices. Leaving Katie alone with the cub, Zira nuzzled against her neck and made a contented sound. Katie scratched behind her ears and looked up at the stars visible through gaps in the canopy. Well, little one, she murmured. I guess we both stepped in it tonight. Zira chirped agreement. Katie smiled and settled in to wait, wondering if she had just made the best first contact in human history or the worst. The humans were escorted to a guest structure built into the hollow of an ancient tree. It was comfortable enough, with soft bedding and a fire pit that filled the space with warmth. But the guards posted outside made it clear they were not free to leave. Katie sat on one of the sleeping platforms with Zira still curled against her. The cub had finally fallen asleep, her small chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Kethsor had come briefly to check on his daughter, but when he saw how peacefully she slept, he had simply nodded and left without taking her. Derek paced the length of the room, his boots clicking against the wooden floor. The council has been meeting for 3 hours, he said. That's either very good or very bad. Or they just have a lot to talk about. Katie stroked Zira's fur gently. We're the first humans they've ever met in person. That's a big deal. You catching their cub mid-pounce is also a big deal. Derek stopped pacing and looked at her. You realize this could go either way, right? They might see what you did as extraordinary, or they might see it as a threat. A threat? You showed that humans can predict Kethrani behavior. You read their cub's body language like it was nothing. Some species would find that frightening. Katie considered this. She looked down at the sleeping cub, at the tiny claws that could have cut her skin if things had gone differently. I don't think they're afraid of us, she said finally. I think they're curious. Curious predators are still predators. The door opened before Katie could respond. Kethsor stood in the entrance, his expression unreadable. He looked at his sleeping daughter, then at Katie. The council wishes to see you, he said. Just you. Your commander can wait here. Derek stepped forward. Protocol requires that I accompany any member of my team to diplomatic discussions. This is not a diplomatic discussion. Kethsor's eyes were steady. This is something else. Something we have no protocol for. He looked at Katie. Will you come? She nodded and carefully rose, cradling Zira against her chest. The cub stirred but didn't wake. She can stay here, Ketzer said, moving to take his daughter. She seems comfortable. Katie met his eyes. Is it all right if I carry her? Something flickered across Ketzer's face. Surprise, maybe? Or something deeper. Yes, he said quietly. It is all right. They walked through the village in silence. The paths were nearly empty now, most Kethrani retired to their homes. But Katie could see eyes watching from darkened doorways, glowing golden in the shadows. Word had spread. Everyone knew what had happened. The council chamber was carved into the largest tree Katie had seen yet, its trunk so wide that the room inside could have held 100 people. Torches lined the walls, casting dancing shadows across the gathered elders. There were 7 of them, all old, all scarred, all watching Katie with intense attention. Vexthari sat at the center, his silver-furred face thoughtful. Katie walked to the center of the chamber and stopped. Zira shifted in her arms, and she adjusted her hold automatically. You called for me? She said. Vexthari nodded. We have been discussing your actions. There is disagreement among us about what they mean. One of the other elders spoke up, a female with dark stripes across her face. Some believe you were testing us? Showing dominance by handling our young without permission? Others, another elder said, a massive male with only one ear, believe you were trying to lower our defenses. Make us trust you before you strike. Katie looked at each of them in turn. And what do you believe? Vexthari's old eyes were warm. We believe you simply acted on instinct. The same instinct that makes your species keep predators as family. He leaned forward. Tell us about that instinct. Help us understand. Katie was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Zira stirred again, and she began to sway gently, the way she did when holding her niece back home. On my world, she began, humans are not the strongest creatures. We're not the fastest or the deadliest. We don't have claws or fangs or armor. By all logic, we should have died out long ago, hunted to extinction by the predators around us. The elders listened in silence. But we survived. We did it by being smart, yes, and by using tools. But we also did something else. Something that other species thought was crazy. She looked down at the sleeping cub in her arms. We made friends with the things that should have eaten us. How? The striped female sounded genuinely curious. How does prey befriend a predator? We stopped seeing them as predators. We saw them as what they really were, animals with needs. They needed food. We could provide food. They needed shelter. We could provide shelter. They needed purpose. We could give them purpose. Katie smiled. And in return they gave us protection, companionship, love. Love? The one-eared male said the word like it was foreign to him. You believe animals can love? I know they can. I've seen it. Dogs who refuse to leave their owners' graves. Cats who comfort crying children. Horses who carry their riders through danger. The bond between humans and our animal companions is real. It's as real as any bond between people. Vexthari rose from his seat and walked toward Katie. He moved slowly, deliberately, giving her time to react if she wanted to. She stood her ground. When Zira jumped at you, he said, what did you feel? Katie thought about it carefully before answering. I felt happy. A child was playing with me? That always makes me happy. You did not think she might hurt you? Not really. I could see she didn't mean harm. And even if she had hurt me, Katie shrugged. Cubs sometimes hurt people by accident. It happens. You don't punish them for it. You teach them to be gentler. Vexthari was very close now, close enough to touch. His golden eyes searched her face. In our oldest stories, he said quietly, there are legends of a species that could tame any beast. They were called the bonded ones. We thought they were myths. Maybe they weren't myths. Maybe they were just humans who visited your ancestors a long time ago. Perhaps. Vexthari reached out with one clawed hand and very gently touched Zira's head. The cub made a soft sound in her sleep and snuggled closer to Katie. My great-grandcub trusts you. Cubs do not trust easily. They see things that adults miss. What does she see in me? I do not know, but I know what I see. Vextari withdrew his hand and stepped back. I see someone who looked at a predator and felt not fear, but kinship. Someone who held a child who could have harmed her and felt only joy. He turned to face the other elders. The humans are not prey, he said. They are not predators either. They are something new. Something that could change everything we know about the universe? The striped female spoke up. What do you propose, Elder? Vextari looked at Katie one more time. Then he smiled, and for the first time Katie saw warmth in that smile. Real warmth, not just political courtesy. I propose we get to know them better. Much better. Starting with this one and her strange habit of catching cubs and spinning in circles. Despite the tension, despite the uncertainty, Katie laughed. And after a moment, Vextari laughed too. Zira slept on. Peaceful and content. Dreaming cub dreams in the arms of a creature from the stars who had somehow become exactly where she belonged. Morning on Kethros Prime came slowly. Sunlight filtering through the dense canopy in golden shafts that painted patterns on the forest floor. Katie woke to find Zira still curled beside her, the cub having refused to return to her own family's dwelling the night before. Kethsur had visited twice during the night, each time standing in the doorway with an expression that mixed concern with something Katie was starting to recognize as wonder. Both times, Zira had chirped at her father, nuzzled closer to Katie, and gone back to sleep. She has never done this, Kethsur had said the second time. Not even with family she has known since birth. Maybe she just likes the way I smell, Katie had offered. Maybe. But the look in Kethsur's eyes suggested he thought it was something more than that. Now. With morning light warming the room, Katie sat up carefully and stretched her stiff muscles. Zira yawned, showing tiny fangs, and blinked up at her with sleepy golden eyes. Good morning, little one, Katie said. Zira chirped and climbed into her lap, demanding attention. Katie obliged. Scratching behind the cub's ears until a loud purr filled the room, the door opened and Derek entered, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Behind him came Vextari and several other elders, their expressions serious but not hostile. Morrison. Derek's voice was careful. The council has reached a decision. Katie's hand paused on Zira's fur. Good or bad? That depends on your perspective. Vextari stepped forward. Despite his age, he moved with quiet strength. And when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of generations of leadership. In Kethrani culture, he began, there is a bond between adult and cub that is sacred. It is called the mark bond. When a cub chooses to sleep with someone, to eat with them, to play with them, to trust them completely, that cub is marking them as family. Katie looked down at Zira, who was watching the elders with alert ears. Last night, Zira chose you. She marked you with her trust, her affection, her acceptance. Vextari's old eyes were solemn. Among our people, such a bond cannot be undone. It is permanent. It is sacred. What does that mean? Katie asked quietly. It means that, in the eyes of Kethrani law, you are no longer an outsider. You are kin. Vextari gestured to Kethsur, who had entered silently and stood near the door. Zira is the daughter of Kethsur, who is the son of my daughter's daughter. Through the mark bond, you are now connected to the family of the senior elder of the Kethrani Dominion. Katie's eyes went wide. She looked at Derek, who seemed equally stunned. I didn't mean to ... double quotes, she started. Intent does not matter. Action does? Zira chose. You accepted. The bond is formed. Vextaria's face softened. This is not a punishment, child. This is an honor. In 10,000 years of our recorded history, no outsider has ever received such a gift. Zira chirped happily and climbed up Katie's arm to perch on her shoulder, her tail wrapping around Katie's neck like a furry scarf. The council has decided, Vextari continued, that because of this bond, the humans are no longer strangers to us. You are family. Your alliance is not something that must be negotiated over years of careful diplomacy. It is sealed now, in this moment, by the trust of a child. Derek stepped forward, his voice careful. Elder Vexthari, I need to make sure I understand. Are you saying that, because of what happened last night, the Kethrani Dominion is willing to form an alliance with humanity? I am saying more than that. Vexthari's eyes glittered. I am saying that the Kethrani Dominion already has formed an alliance with humanity. It was formed when Zira leapt and Katie caught her and spun around laughing. Everything else is just formality. A murmur passed through the elders. Some looked pleased. Others looked uncertain. But none objected. Kethser walked forward until he stood before Katie. He was tall, powerful, with scars that spoke of countless battles. But his eyes, when they met hers, were gentle. My daughter has chosen well, he said. I was not sure when I watched from the shadows. I feared the worst. But I saw your face when you caught her. I saw no fear, no anger, no calculation. Only joy. She's a wonderful child, Katie said. She is trouble. But Kethser smiled when he said it. She is always climbing where she should not climb, exploring where she should not explore, trusting those she should not trust. I have worried about this since she was born. And now? Now, I think perhaps she was simply waiting for someone worthy of her trust to arrive. He reached out and touched Katie's shoulder, the first time a Kethrani adult had initiated contact with a human. You're strange creatures, soft and slow and clawless. Every predator instinct I have says you should be prey. And yet, double quote, and yet? Kethser's smile widened. And yet I find I am not hungry when I look at you. I am curious. I am even perhaps impressed. That's the nicest thing anyone with claws has ever said to me. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made Zira's ears perk up. You are family now? That means you can visit whenever you wish. Zira will expect it. She does not let go of things she has claimed. As if to demonstrate, Zira tightened her tail around Katie's neck and made a possessive chirping sound. The next few hours passed in a blur of ceremonies and formal declarations. The Kethrani had rituals for everything, and adding a new member to the elders' extended family was apparently a big deal. Katie found herself marked with ceremonial paint, fed special foods, and introduced to an endless stream of relatives who all wanted to sniff her and assess this strange creature, who had been chosen by a cub through it all. Zira refused to leave her side when the Avalon's shuttle finally prepared to depart. A crowd had gathered to see the humans off. Katie stood at the bottom of the ramp, Zira in her arms, facing a wall of Kethrani who had come to witness history. I'll come back, Katie promised, looking at Kethser. As soon as I can. She won't forget me, will she? Kethrani never forget family. Kethser reached out and gently extracted his daughter from Katie's arms. Zira protested loudly, chirping and reaching back toward Katie with her small paws. She will be here when you return. We all will. Vexthari stepped forward one last time. His old face was thoughtful. Before you go, he said, I must ask one question. It has been troubling me since last night. Anything. When Zira leapt at you, when a predator's child came at you with claws extended, why did you not fear? Why did you not run or fight? Why did you laugh? Katie thought about the question. She thought about Earth, about the wolves humans had turned into dogs, about the wild cats that purred in human laps, about the centuries of partnership between her species and the predators they shared their world with. Because on my world, she said finally, we learned a long time ago that the things that look dangerous aren't always threats. Sometimes they're friends waiting to happen. Sometimes the scariest-looking creatures have the most love to give. She smiled at Zira, who was still reaching toward her. You just have to be brave enough to find out which is which. And if you guess wrong? If the predator is not a friend, Katie's smile turned slightly fierce. Then we deal with it. But we always assume the best first. Life is too short to be afraid of everything that has claws. Vexthari nodded slowly. Your species is either the wisest in the galaxy or the most foolish. I suspect it may be both. Probably, Katie agreed. She walked up the ramp into the shuttle. At the top, she turned and waved at Zira, who was still chirping and reaching toward her. "I'll be back," she called. "I promise." The ramp closed and the shuttle lifted off Dot in the Avalon's bridge. Derek sat down heavily and stared at the mission report on his screen. He had a lot to write and he wasn't sure how to begin. Finally, he started typing. Mission report. First contact with the Kethrani Dominion was successful, though not in any way our protocols predicted. The alliance we hoped to build over years of careful negotiation has been secured in a single evening, thanks to the unconventional diplomacy of xenobiologist Katie Morrison. Key finding: sometimes humanity's greatest strength is not our technology, not our numbers, not our weapons. Sometimes it is simply our willingness to see a predator and think, "Friend." Sometimes it is our refusal to let fear be our first response. Recommendation: more research into human-predator bonding instincts and their applications in xenodiplomacy. Also, consideration of including Katie Morrison in all future first contact missions with predator species. He paused, then added one final line. Personal note: when asked if humans ever feel fear, Morrison replied that of course we do. We just choose to laugh anyway. I think that may be the most human thing I've ever heard. Derek saved the report and looked out at the stars. Somewhere below, on a forest moon, a cub was probably driving her father crazy. Waiting for her strange new family member to return, he smiled. First contact with the Kethrani Dominion complete. Alliance status secured by laughter and love. Not bad for a day's work.